Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Before I get started with episode 470 of Cut the Clutter, let me first of all, with a big smile and wholeheartedly thank you for the warmth and trust you have shown towards the print. We opened our payment gateway only late after midnight, and already we are overwhelmed with support, with contributions, and with very warm words, and we will be responding to each one of you individually as well, because not only are we grateful for the fact that you are paying for the journalism, quality journalism that we bring to you, but also because you've shown us the trust of doing so without any compulsion. We have decided not to go behind a paywall yet. It is voluntary. If you think good journalism is worth paying for, you pay. And the fact that so many of you are doing it tells me a couple of things. One, it tells me that India is still full of people with great large hearts and also wonderful minds. Wonderful minds because they believe in democracy. Democracy can't run without politics, and politics can't remain honest unless you have free speech and free media. And media or news can't be free if you don't pay for it. So thank you very much for doing that. You are our real asset. The biggest capital that any organization, any institution has is its customers, clients, but in our case, our audience. Because in journalism, one brand value works more than in any other business, and that is trust. I have to say that one, we are greatly overwhelmed, and second, it reminds us of the sense of responsibility that we have now, because trust, your trust brings responsibility for us. That done, let me talk about today's Cut the Clutter. So two issues. As we did yesterday in 469, there was Nirmala Sitharaman's announcement, which I said is now becoming like a cricket test match. Day after day after day, you play it session by session, day after day. So yesterday we analyzed the first tranche in the first half of Cut the Clutter, and we picked up the thread on coronavirus in the second half. Today, because we have something more startling to tell you about coronavirus, we'll take that first and maybe a little bit about tranche 2 later. In fact, if you want to know more about tranche 2 in detail, please see the live recording of the conversation that Ila Patnaik, who writes on economics for us, she's a very well known economist, she is had with YP Rajesh, our managing editor. So she gives you the gyan on economy. I only know a little bit about politics, so maybe I'll come at it from the point of view of political economy. So what is this startling thing that I'm again and again talking about on coronavirus? That is the news from Russia. Now, in all the coronavirus stories so far, Russia somehow has been missing. Started in China, went to South Korea, went to Italy, then went to Spain, then France, then UK, then America, right? Russia has been missing in that story. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, you make up your mind, because there is a fortunate part also to this, and I will come to that. But unfortunately, Russia is back in the list. Not just that, Russia now has the second largest number of cases in the world after America. So more than 2.5 lakh cases in Russia. Russia since May 3 has been adding 10,000 cases a day. It's a lot of cases for a country with a population less than a seventh of India. Now, in India also, one day when our case count went up by 4,000, it was a headline story. Oh, case count, more than 4,000, highest ever. But Russia, tiny Russia compared to us, has now been adding 10,000 a day. That is the unfortunate part. Now, why did I also use the word fortunate? I did not make a slip of tongue. I do make a lot of slips of tongue, but not like this. Because Russia's fatality rate is the lowest in the world. So with nearly 2.5 lakh cases, Russia's fatalities are just 2,212. That is 0.9%. It's less than 1%. Now, if you also calculate, as we now know from evidence of serological studies in New York, that for every case discovered, there may be 10 other asymptomatic cases which have not been tested or discovered, then this brings your fatality rate really low. 0.9%. Now compare that 0.9% with Russia's peers. So Russia's peers, I'll say European countries of some size, although Russia is a small country in terms of population compared to India or Pakistan even, but compared to Spain, France, UK, the three European countries who are on top of the tally of the cases and fatalities, Russia is more than twice as big in population. Yet Russia has 2,212 killed, 0.9% fatality rate. The other countries are much richer than Russia, much better organized than Russia, but Spain, France, UK, these three countries have fatality rate of 12 to 14%. So Russia is almost 1/12th, 1 divided by 12 of them. So if 12 Spaniards die per 1,000 people, 1 Russian would die. That, or 12 Spaniards die per 100 people, less than 1 Russian would die. So why is this happening? In fact, if you stretch it, China about 2, you don't want to trust China's figures, don't trust China's figures. Germany, which is being globally hailed as a success story, Angela Merkel has now become a global star. Tom Friedman said the other day that, while the whole world is celebrating alpha males, the real champion is an alpha female, Angela Merkel. 4.4% in Germany, right? That's a success story. US is 6%. India, very good. Given our poverty and our broken health system, our fatality rate is less than 3% now, and I can see that as time passes, as more cases come in, the percentage of India's fatalities is coming down in terms of percentage of the entire body of cases, but even that is almost 3 times of Russia. So what's happening in Russia? A lot of the data I'm telling you is from a detailed story from Bloomberg, which is a very reliable agency. We published that story on the print.in yesterday. I'm giving you a link. Please go through that story. So Russia's fatality figures have surprised the whole world. So immediate thing is, they must be fixing their data. They must be lying. Now, it is possible, but how much can you lie? That was also said when India's numbers, low numbers, both of cases and fatalities, surprised the world. And the immediate thing was India must be hiding, India must be lying, or people are dying of other causes, but Indians are not talking about it, right? But by now, if that had happened, facts would have come out. Now there is a reluctant acknowledgement that there is a difference with the subcontinent, and we've been saying it that the subcontinent is an outlier in the world. With 22% of the world's population, it just has a couple of percentage share of the global cases and fatalities. So Russia is a complete outlier now in Europe and in the developed world. I know Russia is not as rich as its other European peers. It's nowhere as rich as America. Russia has many governance problems, but even there, if in spite of that fatalities are this low, even if they were fixing it, even if they were fixing these by 50%, even if they were fixing these by 150%, even then these fatalities will be a fraction of what's happening in Europe, France, Spain, UK, America, even Germany. So why is it happening like that? And there are many theories, and I think this will be the discussion point now going ahead for some time. So a few things. First of all, very early on, we had talked about BCG, and we had used that map of the world to show you a kind of BCG cum COVID map. And on that map also you can see that Russia had much fewer cases, and Russia has a compulsory BCG program. Now you may say, that is anecdotal, right? But what about other countries, right? The fact is that just like Russia, you have Portugal. Portugal is also a European country. Greece is also a European country. But Portugal, for which we have very good data and we've analyzed it, is a European country that has a compulsory BCG program. So fatalities and cases in Portugal as a percentage of the population are way less than its next door neighbor, which is Spain. Now you might say Russia is fixing its data or hiding its data, or falsifying its data, but Portugal is a European Union country. It's not possible for them to defy EU standards on disclosure and surveillance. So there is something there that we might think about. The other thing that initially came out of some studies in China was the weather. And then it was said that coronavirus to thrive needs a certain optimum kind of weather. So below 3 degrees, it's not happy. Just as above 35 degrees, it's not so happy. Now, could that be the reason why Russia did not get hit by coronavirus early on when Wuhan and the rest got hit? Although Russia and China have a lot of people going back and forth, maybe it was then too cold in Russia, and Russia is only now warming up to temperature levels which coronavirus likes. Again, you might say it's anecdotal, but the fact that Russia only has 0.9% fatalities, which are 1/3 of even India, which are 1/12 of its European, much richer European peers, which is 1/7 of America, then something has to be there, and that's worth looking at. The other thing that the Russians are doing is they are using a lot of this Japanese drug, favipiravir. Now, favipiravir was a drug that was earlier developed in Japan to fight coronavirus influenzas. And this drug goes and messes up the virus's reproductive system. The virus is not a living being. It's a nasty piece of work, but it's not a living being. It actually gets into our cells and gets our cells to reproduce it. It's the ultimate parasite. अपना काम ही नहीं करता है. But this drug obviously interferes with some enzymes, so this virus can't, so coronaviruses can't replicate. Japanese have had good early success with it. Russians are now investing in it. So there is a quote from the head of RDIF, which is Russian Direct Investment Fund, which has put a bunch of money in favipiravir research and which is now also producing favipiravir samples in Russia and using it on a lot of patients in Russia. And in fact, the quote from him is that his name is Kirill Dmitriev, pardon my pronunciation, he says that they expect that the use of this drug early can prevent 50% of cases from becoming epidemiologically dangerous. So that is significant, and now that I have said this, I will tell you that there is another story on the print.in which you should see, where we talked about how an Indian firm, that's Glenmark, fine Indian firm, has started trials, randomized controlled trials with favipiravir in India as well, with 150 patients in 10 public and private hospitals. 150 patients have been randomized on 1:1 basis. So half will get the drug, half will get a placebo. It's a 14-day treatment and then 28-day study period after that. And then first you will get initial results and then preprints, and then I think by the time you get peer-reviewed results, it will be July end or August. But as it's happening around the world, when a drug shows promise, regulators move quickly to start approving it. So once again, if this is approved in India, then Glenmark says this will be called FabiFlu. Remember, there was something else that came up after H1N1 that was called Tamiflu. So this will be FabiFlu. And if coronavirus starts responding to drugs like these, hopefully, because it may remain with us for a long time, this will also become one more flu. So this looks like one more step towards some kind of a treatment, if not a cure. Now, before I go away, Nirmala Sitharaman's second tranche. So again, details you get from Ila Patnaik. But I will tell you a couple of things. One, it's the first time I have seen the Modi government so on the defensive. Except saying, we are sorry we let down migrant workers. I think I can see that the government is now smarting, that they took their eye off the ball and they dropped this catch. And this now has spread all over the country. So these images of these migrants walking back, wheeling their bags, their babies on their bags, hanging from trucks, falling, getting run over by trains, trucks, this and that, are now hurting the government. And there is a sense of regret that they messed up. So it's good that there is political acceptance. I would have preferred, and I am now giving you opinion, I would have preferred if we had seen more contrition. If we had seen something like we are sorry, instead of saying Prime Minister had already said don't go away anywhere, and Prime Minister also said that food and shelter will be provided to you with, with great humility. I have to say the Prime Minister did not say that you stay on wherever you are, food and shelter will be provided for you. So don't bring in an afterthought. This is a ball you drop. So say sorry, captain, and the captain is the voter and the poor Indian. They've been let down. So good that this has been done. A lot of this is now directed towards the poor, which is also a good thing. There are some interesting things that I pick up. For example, it says that earlier they said that you will get this much free ration, but all grain, that is rice and wheat, but also 1 kg of dal. Now dal has been replaced with 1 kg of chana. It can mean anything. I think it means two things. One, that Government of India simply does not have that much urad or masoor or arhar acquired to give it away at such a large scale. So when they said dal, they had not thought it through. But chana they have, because chana they acquire in large amounts. And second, probably, maybe once again I'm guessing, that because a lot of the migrant laborers are from Bihar, Eastern UP, Jharkhand, where a lot of sattu is eaten, for which you need chana. So 1 kilo of chana has also now been added. That's interesting. Third, there is the 70,000 crore plan for housing, etc., for poor people. Now, once again, it looks very diffused, although I like the idea that government sets up public-private partnerships with private builders, incentivizes them and gets this housing for working class people or migratory labor, rented accommodation also for them in an institutionalized manner built. I would have liked to see it go a step further. For example, just as we are now getting used to this terrible cliche, deadly coronavirus, we are dealing with another deadly cliche, Dharavi, Asia's largest slum. If you took out even 20,000 crores out of this and set up a slum rehabilitation program in Bombay and said in 3 years from now, India will happily lose the quote unquote pride of place or the shameful pride of place of having the largest slum in Asia, and there will be a massive slum rehabilitation in Bombay and our cities using this money, then I think it will be money well spent. So those are the big changes. And finally, the one nation, one ration card scheme, which I think is a brilliant scheme. It's a very good idea. It's not something that's been thought of just now. It was something that was in the works. But when a crisis comes, you get an impetus. It's being done. It's a great scheme. There will be some glitches, but so what happens now is that if family gets a ration card, it's like your Aadhaar card. You can go and get the amount of ration that is due to you anywhere in the country. You don't have to go to your local ration shop anywhere in the country. And if the family is split, for example, if one person in the family is a migratory labor in one part of the country, he or she can get that much share wherever he or she is, because anything you draw is on a tech platform, an Aadhaar linked tech platform. So if you are entitled to 40 kilos, your family has taken 30 kilos, you can still take 10 kilos even if you are 1,000 miles away from your family. Now I will just tell you a little closing story about this. This is not a Modi government idea. This has been in the works for a long time. This idea came up in 2011, and you will see the front cover of that report, and you can read the whole report. I am giving you a link. This was a report of a task force that the UPA had set up, which was submitted in October 2011, 9 years ago, right? Exactly this scheme. And what happened? That was the season of bad ideas in UPA 2, which I call a case of a body destroying itself with autoimmune disease. So UPA 2 was a story of the Congress party destroying its own government. So in that season, every good idea that came in was shot down. Even a Stinger missile, even a SAM 11, 12, 15, whatever, Patriot missile could not shoot down anything as accurately as the Congress party, particularly its National Advisory Committee, could shoot down at that point. They shot down every good idea that came up between 2009 and 2014. This was one of those ideas. 9 years later, now Narendra Modi is running away with this idea. All credit to him that he's done it, and he's not disowned it because it was the UPA's idea. So this is a case of, I know some Hindi film songs transcend generations. So remember the one from Silsila, लौंगा इलायची का बीड़ा लगाया, खाए गोरी का यार बलमतर से रंग बरसे. तो ये वही है, ये लौंगा इलायची का बीड़ा लगाया था यूपी ने और कांग्रेस ने, और उसको खा रहे हैं नरेंद्र मोदी और एनडीए और बीजेपी. अब जिसने पछताना है, इफ यू वांट टू फील सॉरी, यू फील सॉरी फॉर योरसेल्व्स. यू रिड्यूस्ड योरसेल्व्स टू 40 odd in parliament, and you gave Narendra Modi 2 full majorities just because you were so bloody minded and so intellectually challenged.